Welcome to another episode of our personal empowerment audio series, Finding Yourself in Paradise. Hi, I'm Michael Benner.
And I'm Steve Snyder. And our program today is sort of a double-edged sword, sort of a blessing and a curse. We're going to talk about what we call a comfort zone.
First thing that comes to mind for me, Steve, when you talk about somebody's comfort zone is being on the freeway. And you and I spent enough years living in Los Angeles that we could talk about our favorite freeways and our favorite places. And they all involve getting cut off at some point by someone who, in most cases, I'm sure would deny they cut you off. At least it wasn't their intention to cut you off.
Certainly not to cut you off, particularly.
And what does that even mean, to cut us off? I mean, did he really put you in danger? Or was there something deeper, something more primal inside of us, some survival thing that fires off? Maybe it's the amygdala that fires off and says, this looks like danger.
It's sort of interesting because, like, if you're walking down a crowded sidewalk in New York City or something like that, and people are walking right next to you, in both directions, and they miss you by inches, and it's okay. I mean, it doesn't feel like there's any danger there necessarily. But you mentioned earlier the idea of when you get in a shopping cart in our earlier conversation. You're holding the shopping cart. Now if somebody comes within a foot of you, it feels like they're too close. And when you're in an automobile, it's more like 10, 15 feet of you, and it feels too close. And when you're on your property, it's like 2,000 square feet or whatever. It's almost like the bigger the thing we're in, the more area we need to feel safe in it.
Yeah, you didn't even need to stop there. It could be the way you defend your high school or your college as an alma mater.
Right, or your whole country against, people from the outside of your country.
Nationalism.
Yeah.
And when will we arrive at a sense of globalism? So many people are afraid of one world government and an authoritarian dictatorship. Well, we should always, be leery of the potential for tyranny, but why couldn't the world get along? Many more cynical people say that'll only happen when there's an alien invasion.
Yeah, that would do it. Then we'd all be one world against another world. But the idea of us all coming together is a wonderful dream. But what encourages me is the fact that we don't all have to agree with that. Even just a significant minority of us agree with that, it's going to change the world in some wonderful ways. And when we talk about what feels safe to people, is it eventually going to get to the place where skin color doesn't matter anymore and religious beliefs don't matter anymore and even philosophy? The only thing that matters is people doing good or being kind, or not being good or kind. When it gets down to behavior, then you have to be discreet. You have to have some ability to say, I don't want these kind of people around me because they hurt people. But if we can do it by their behavior instead of by their ancestry or their genealogy or whatever, I think that then we're moving in the right direction. And we increase our comfort zone to include everybody else that is now us because they behave good and kind as we do.
I think it's a great phrase, comfort zone. Everybody wants to be comfortable, but I think the operative word here is safe. We're talking about a safety zone, danger-free area. Again, I think the primary unit is the home and the family. And as you say, the comfort zone is sort of the property line or maybe the larger neighborhood.
Well, you had some trespassers, your wife was telling me earlier today, right? Just coming to take your fruit.
Well, see, I would never use that word.
I mean, that's what
this fellow walked up to knocked down their door. I don't think
it's not really, because you don't have a sign posted that says no trespassing.
But he'd been helping himself to the fruit.
And it's not his fruit.
And the flowers.
Yeah.
And yet I got sort of this hippie energy that, of course,
it's fruit, it's flowers.
It's flowers. It's just coming out, and it's Hawaii, and so it just sort of comes out of the sky. It's actually the aina is the sacred word for the way the land produces food and air and supports life. And generally, the ecology in Hawaii, they talk about preserving the Aina or the land.
Right. And, we do want to share, but there is a place where it's inappropriate. Like,
well, you were talking about trespassing.
Yeah. For example, on our land, there's a lot of people who live nearby who don't have access to fresh water. I mean, they catch the rain, but if it's, and usually there's a lot of that, but if there's not rain, then they have to go somewhere like to a stream to get some water. Well, we put a spigot out on the road so they can get all the water they want from our well. Well, we did that for a couple of reasons. One is to be generous and kind neighbors, but the other is to stop them from coming all the way down to on our property to get the water.
Well, yeah, the dogs bark, and
right.
It's a disruption and a disturbance.
And everybody wants to have this space around them that they feel like nobody's going to intrude in. And trespass is an awfully hard word, but there is sort of a invasion feeling when people come into a space that you think you're private, you think you're alone in.
So do you believe that privacy then is basically a survival-based feeling or issue that we have, our need for, not that it's right or wrong, just do you think it's triggered by this instinct that we've always got to be on guard and afraid of somebody we don't know, stranger?
There's some of that, but I really think that this privacy thing is really more a luxury, more a you want it if you can have it, but you can learn to live without it. I mean, there are cultures where you don't have a moment of time when there's not somebody in the same room or the same space with you. I mean, if it's normal, if you grew up that way, with even where I grew up in Los Angeles, there's parts of L.A. where 5 families live in a 2-bedroom house, and so you don't have any space that is. So I don't know that our survival thing gets kicked in when we're always around, but Eckhart Tolle said, he said, the greatest thing about having money is that you can do what you want when you want and freedom from your neighbors. You got space from other people. That's a luxury. I think it's one of the great luxuries that human beings desire the most. But is it a necessity to be alone? I don't think so. But what is necessary is to have a comfort zone. And it might just be that you're sitting on your bed and you've got your iPod playing and your headphones on, and other people are 5 feet away from you, but they're 5 feet away from you. They're not 5 inches away from you, and that's your comfort zone. I mean, people who live very close to each other learn how to carve out little spaces for themselves. The closest I can recall to doing that are like those rock concerts I used to go to where there's a million people on the lawn and like, this is my blanket, I mean, this space, is like for me and my people, and if you wouldn't mind being just an inch or two farther away, it's an interesting feeling. It could be a little space, but I think we do need some space.
I think part of that freedom, and that's a good word for it, that's one of the benefits of having an abundance of prosperity, plenty of money. But there's also a freedom, it occurs to me, of the subtle and sometimes not so subtle pressures of what other people think. And we can say, well, I'm free of that. I'm mature now. I've learned not to do that. I don't change my nature or my character, my personality just to please other people. But even if that's so, we feel the tug. We feel the subtle pull. And I'm thinking of some of the experiments I've seen done, videotaped of people. Everybody in the elevator is in on the experiment. As the elevator stops, opens the doors, and one new guy, who's the subject of the experiment, gets on the elevator. And as the doors close, everybody turns and faces the back of the elevator. So everybody who's all in on the experiment, right? They're all now facing the wrong way. And this guy's facing the door, of course. And like 9 out of 10 will turn and conform to the group, even though they don't know why they're turning their back on the door. And again, they're not people, it seems to me anyway, that are particularly prone to do what they're told, afraid of authority or whatever. But
I would be interested in what that 1 out of 10 has, what the one characteristic or characteristics they have that caused them to not turn around. That would be interesting to know.
I think real mental health. It's like these people are all crazy.
Right. I'm the only sane one here.
Candid camera, or I know I'm sane. And it's like if you're the only person in the parade marching on a step, it's obvious that you're the one that's out of step. It's a matter of conforming. As long as we know we're we agreed to march in step, and I'm the only one out, so what's the point here?
But the traditional, stereotypical thing to do is face the doors of the
Well,
elevator.
of course, yeah. Waiting for the
what are they
doors,
doing?
unless it's one of those hospital elevators with doors on both ends.
There's some hotels like that too, but not too many.
Yeah, no, so this pressure to conform, I think privacy, creating a comfort zone, includes getting away from all of that, even if you're not subject to being manipulated easily that way. I think we feel a tug and a pull, and privacy is like, I don't even have to get dressed today if I don't want.
Yeah, I don't have to please anybody else today. I can do, well, either what I know I need to do. Sometimes privacy doesn't give me the freedom to just be lazy and goof off. Just because I'm alone doesn't mean just because nobody else is watching, I'm watching. But it does give me the freedom to choose my timing, to pick my order of doing things, to not have to please anybody else or work around anybody else. There is something special about that, and I think there's been a lot of experiments about people in private offices versus in cubicles versus in open spaces, kind of thing, and in terms of distractions, you cut down the distractions. If you have a private office where you can close the door and put down the shades, there's a lot less distractions, and it feels like there's more power. Why do we give the higher you get in the business, the bigger space you get and the more privacy you get? Because it's ideal. That's what you want to have. We have a longing for it. A need for it, I don't know. Again, I think people can work really well in those symposium scenarios, with hundreds of people in the same room. I think people don't have to be all by themselves to work well. But there is something about it that calls to us that, says, I really would love to be able to have this private space.
Well, it also occurs to me that if we're going to talk about our own need for a comfort zone, that we might, as leaders and people who aspire to improve and develop their leadership skills, to want to help create that for other people, to help them with their comfort zones. Indeed, wouldn't that be an important part of any relationship, the opportunity to help somebody else feel comfortable?
Well, yeah, one of the things that we all attempt to do in helping people increase their comfort zone is to get us in it, for them to be able to expand their comfort, to get them to be able to expand their comfort zone to include us and our peeps, and our people that hang out with us as well. So yeah, one of the things we all like to do is to, when we find people we want to befriend, is to ask them to expand their comfort zone to include us. And wouldn't it be wonderful, as a process we all go through, to all have a goal of expanding our comfort zone to include all safe people, to include all kind, loving, caring people, regardless of who they are. Our comfort zone includes the people with it, also includes the activities, that we engage in. For example, some people have a comfort zone that allows them to get on stage and speak in front of theoretically thousands or millions of people. You and I have that comfort zone, but there are other people who would be very uncomfortable even standing on that stage, much less having to speak, and there are other people who are very uncomfortable even thinking about doing that. It's a great fear for most people. The comfort zone for some people would extend to being in a big party with hundreds of people around. Other people, like, they're only safe if there's maybe 6 or 8 of us. They don't feel safe. So we all have comfort zones in terms of the activities we engage in and indulge in, and to some extent, it's a good idea to do what's important in your life inside your comfort zone. But it's also, because when you get out of your comfort zone, you get all stressed and anxious and you don't necessarily do your best performing. But it's a great idea to practice outside of your comfort zone. That is, to do things where you're not performing, where the outcome isn't essential, to be great. And you try new things where it's okay to fail. Step out of your comfort zone, expand your comfort zone, grow yourself, because, you don't really grow much inside your comfort zone. So inside your comfort zone is a great place to be when you're doing things that really matter, but when you're performing with knowledge you already have, when you're acting upon the practice you've already done. But when it comes to trying something new, which we need to do, we need to grow, we need to expand, then we have to go outside of that comfort zone and engage in activities that are not comfortable, but we want to make sure we do that where there's no major penalty for messing up.
Yeah, I'd like to go to that in a few minutes. The idea of comfort zones in terms of taking little risks in your life, in your career or relationships or whatever area of your life. But this idea of helping people develop their comfort zones, I don't think most people ever even think about. What can I do to help this person feel safe? Whether a salesperson would, a professional, a good
doctors and therapists are trained bedside manner.
Yeah, there you go.
Although I've seen some terrible bedside manner in a lot of medical professionals.
And again, it's what you don't know. It's like people that have good bedside manner know they do because they developed it deliberately. And doctors with bad bedside manner, I think, don't know that they don't have good bedside
or
manner.
Don't care, but usually don't know.
Chances are they just have their minds on other things. And like you said, we're characters. Every individual on this planet is just that, a unique individual. And we don't consider that very often, I don't think, either. Why aren't we more curious about who we are? Why are we much more interested in other people? Well, rather than get off into a tangent, we'll do a show on that.
Yeah, I wonder, if we're really interested in other people or if we're interested in what other people think about us.
Well, that brings me right back to what I was asking you about this. Do you think that most people consciously go out of their way to deliberately, with awareness, promote the comfort of other people they're dealing with in a room?
I think there are certain professions that sort of have that built into it, but I think it's a distinct minority. I think most people are not at all concerned about other people's comfort. If they're conscious of it at all, they're concerned about theirs. But I think most people are not even conscious of their own comfort levels. They're just acting on autopilot. They're just doing what they did last time.
Well, I think this is where the value of reflective communication comes in. We see this in conflict resolution, mediation, in couples counseling, parent-child stuff. The idea that even though everybody thinks they want to win an argument, what they really want is to be understood. Doesn't matter if the person agrees with you if you know they understand you. And that is a very important but missing element in most conflict resolution.
Yeah, most people think it's all about winning or losing. And whereas that may be a factor, it's always a much less significant factor than feeling heard, feeling understood, feeling like they don't think you're crazy or wrong. Because if they don't hear you or they don't understand you, then all you can think is they think you're either stupid or crazy or just you're not thinking right. If they say to you, well, I don't agree with that, but I can certainly understand why you think that, or, boy, your logic is there, it's just I have a different perspective on it, then at least they feel acknowledged. And whereas they didn't win the argument, which was their ultimate goal, they walk away with 90% of what they're looking for, and that's huge.
If you can, in all areas, let's say we're watching a sporting contest on television and you and I are rooting for different teams, it seems to me that the best way to communicate to you why I love my team so much is to acknowledge your love for your team and to first give what it is I'd like to receive in return.
Yeah, if I tell you you're a stupid idiot for being a Celtics fan and not a Laker fan, that doesn't really create harmony between us. But if I say, man, I really appreciate your passion for the Celtics, I feel that same way about the Lakers, then we're brothers and we're on the same team.
It's always in the order. And we know this because we've been taught from childhood, hopefully, ideally, that it's give and receive. But in life, it tends to often work out that we want to receive before we give.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to get anything back from you if I give, so I'm going to wait to make sure I get something by waiting till you give first. If you want to create friends, waiting for somebody to befriend you is probably the worst possible way. You must go out and be the giver, and then, of course, as the universe works, you often say you don't reap before you sow. You can't pick up your vegetables before you planted them. It just makes sense to give first before you receive.
Yep. And again, even though we know that, the challenge is to remember that. I mean, What is a grudge? What is the constant arguing that people, even those who like each other, have back and forth, sometimes not so friendly discussion, and it builds and it builds, and now the wives are embarrassed, or maybe the wives are having their own conflict and talking behind each other's back. This whole melodrama of human existence is so supercharged with fear and anger and hostility because we simply don't know this simple trick, which is you can acknowledge a person's wisdom, their right to believe whatever they want to believe, their emotional feeling. I think that's probably the best thing to acknowledge, Snyder going right to the heart of it, without having to agree with a thing that they're saying. Just, I understand how you can feel that way. Like Steve said, I pretty much feel that way about my position. So I can certainly, if you give that first, the other person is totally disarmed. Dr. Martin Luther King said, when I make friends of an enemy, he is no longer an enemy. Now, that seems pretty obvious and pretty simple, but it's very profound. Why then would we still have enemies unless we wanted them, like maybe there was profit in it somehow? But we have the technology. We know how to make friends out of our enemies. We can do that. People say, well, you can't negotiate with a terrorist, Benner. What are you talking about? I've seen tame grizzly bears on TV, grizzly bears doing movies that, you don't have to appeal to their reason, and yet we can domesticate them. We don't have to agree in order to understand. And what's more important, ask yourself now, is the agreeing really all that important? Is that really what people want? And if the understanding is what we really want, then maybe understanding trumps, more important than agreeing on facts, is integrating them and understanding them deeply. This is the distinction I make between knowledge and understanding, too. That it's one thing to have knowledge, but understanding is even a deeper embracing and a living out of what it is that you understand. Does that work for you?
Yeah, I like that a lot. The idea of a smart person, a knowledgeable person might know how to make a nuclear bomb, but a really wise person, a really enlightened, understanding person wouldn't make one. It's sort of, there's a difference between knowledge. I think understanding means understanding means the ramifications of the application of that knowledge included in the knowledge, and that's a bigger understanding. There's wisdom coming in with understanding, and it's expanding people's comfort zones when you can show them that you're not against them, that you're on the same side of the table. Like if my wife and I have a problem. In many couples, it's like, okay, now the problem is it's you versus me to try and solve this problem. And what we always attempt to do is see it's you and me versus the problem rather than you versus me. So that idea of disarming somebody, putting them on the same side of the table with you, with the problem on the other side of the table versus with being on opposite sides of the table, that creates a bigger comfort zone. Now it's us together to solve this thing, and it makes people feel more comfortable. It disarms their need to win an argument. When you give in, and it's a surrender, but it's not a losing. It's like surrender is a very powerful thing. When you surrender some of the need to be right from the need to win, and the person feels like, well, we're not fighting now. This is now we went from wrestling to dancing. We're no longer like trying to win this thing. We're trying to do this thing together to make it a beautiful experience. Yes, we're still doing some of the same moves we would do if we were wrestling, but in wrestling, I'm trying to pin you, and in dancing, we're trying to create this thing together. It's a very subtle but significant shift, and that's what happens when you expand your comfort zone to include another person in the comfort zone. You dance instead of wrestle.
It's interesting. In dancing, it doesn't even matter where you end up.
It's true.
Alan Watts has this famous lecture where he talks about singing, music, and dancing both being spiritual exercises because unlike material things where winning or arriving or accomplishing a score is always important, singing and dancing, first of all, you never hurry up, right? You don't rush faster and faster to get to the end. And it's not a race. And in terms of dancing, it doesn't even matter where you go. You're free to go wherever you want. You can stop when you want and when the music's over. And so when it doesn't matter whether you win and it doesn't matter where you end up, everything is good, then, well, that's a spiritual point of view. That's a worldview that, according to Alan Watts, who I have a lot of respect for, one of the first American Buddhists in the 20th century, very prolific author, Alan Watts. Buy his stuff if you haven't heard of him or heard his audio tapes or read his books. Highly recommend Alan Watts. And so this whole idea of singing and dancing and music being spiritual in nature. Like he said, why do you think angels have harps? He says that's what heaven is. It's singing and rejoicing and dancing and having a good time. Comfort zone.
There's a really cool indicator to find out whether something's inside or outside of your comfort zone in terms of like the activities of your life. There's this thing that we do when things are outside of our comfort zone called procrastination. To me, that's like the red button that says this is out of your comfort zone. If you're like not jumping on it, if you keep pushing it off, that's probably because there's something about it that's uncomfortable, that's out of your comfort zone. And so those things that you need to do that you're procrastinating, there's really two forms of procrastinating. There's procrastinating the things you need to do, like pay your taxes kind of thing, and you just keep putting that off. And then there's also procrastinating those things that you dream of doing, like writing that great book or finally getting to learn to play chess. And people procrastinate the big things. It seems too overwhelming, and they procrastinate the things that they don't want to do. Both of those are outside of their comfort zones. Now, the ones that are like learn chess or write that great novel, you've got an option. You can do that or not. But when it comes to those things like paying your taxes and things like that, that would be a great way of growing yourself, is to take on those things that you know you need to do and push yourself to break through the procrastination barrier and start on those things early. That grows you. It's not an easy thing to do. It's a very challenging thing to do. The benefits are huge. I mean, by doing those things that you need to do and do them consciously, like I'm going to pay my taxes, so I'm going to get into paying my taxes. I'm going to do nothing but really focus on this tax thing, and I'm going to learn how to do it, and I'm going to really get into it, and I'm going to, that kind of experience. Not like, oh, I wish it was over, but like, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to jump in and I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to do it the best I can do it. That experience really pushes your comfort areas and grows you in some really powerful ways.
You and I think a third, maybe a fourth person even, I think there were three of us. In 1983, we did a program called Integrated Living at the LA Convention Center, and I remember my segment was entitled Love What You Do Until You Can Do What You Love. And that's what you're talking about. All right, I have to leave my comfort zone and do the dishes. Or I have to take out the garbage. Or the ancient Buddhist saying is chop wood, carry water. First enlightenment and then the dirty laundry. That's the way Ken Wilber or Jack Kornfield says it. That means take your enlightenment into the dirty laundry. And if you got to do it, then do it. Get into it. Don't just rush through it unconsciously in an attempt to get it done and get back into your comfort zone. Bring your comfort zone to the task.
Yeah, because you don't really expand your comfort zone except for the moment when you rush through. But when you really get into it and be one with the experience, so to speak, of the taxes or whatever it is, now the next time you have to do taxes, it's in your comfort zone. If you just rush through it and wish it was over and all that, it's still out of your comfort zone. You're not growing yourself. You're temporarily doing something uncomfortable. But when you, instead of doing something uncomfortable, you take what was uncomfortable and make it comfortable by doing it with consciousness instead of rushing through it, but by observing yourself and being grateful to yourself and being appreciative of yourself and being conscious of everything that you're doing, all of a sudden your comfort zone grows. And now it's much easier next time to do your taxes and maybe to fill out any of those government forms and maybe to go, maybe a whole lot of other things. Because if you can do that, you can do a whole lot of other things. So we're not talking about just doing things that are uncomfortable. That's not it at all. Doing things that are uncomfortable, the next time you do them, they'll be uncomfortable again. We're talking about doing things that were uncomfortable or you would imagine would be uncomfortable and doing them with consciousness to make them more comfortable, make them something that feels part of who you are.
You bet. I think this is a good time to ask for help, too. To bring the spouse or the kids or your parents in on this and say, I have to leave my comfort zone to do this. This is something I don't really want to do. Is there any way you can help me on this? And if so, if you help me with this, we could have fun doing it together. Wouldn't be nearly as bad as if I had to do it alone. And then in exchange, I'll help you do something you don't want to do. We'll do it together like a team and sort of get, a little rah-rah and develop some excitement about, well, at least we're doing it together, right? Something that's got to be done. And there's always that stuff in our lives. Part of the accumulation of stuff in our lives is hauling it to the curb every week. And as you get older and you start moving around more, in either or both cases, there's just more and more trips to the dumpster. You spend your whole life acquiring stuff, and then the last third of your life trying to get rid of all the stuff that you've acquired in the first part.
It really is passages that we go through, and things do change, and what was uncomfortable for some people in childhood become much more comfortable as they grow, and maybe even become the thing they love to do the most when they get older. I mean, we do change, maybe not essentially, but we do change behaviorally and in a lot of other ways too. And yet, there's some things that remain pretty consistent throughout our lives. For example, one of the physical area comfort zones, how much space you need between you and other people, varies depending upon your primary representational system. For example, in neurolinguistic programming, they talk about people being either primarily visual or auditory or kinesthetic. Well, visual people have very little need for space. People can be standing right next to them. They are comfortable with that. Auditory people like a little more distance, and kinesthetic people like a lot more distance. They don't feel comfortable with people encroaching on their space at all. So if you're visual, that is, you use visual language like I see what you mean or I get the picture, and you look up and you talk real fast, you're probably going to be comfortable with people around you. If you're more auditory and you love the sound of your own voice and you use words like, oh, I hear you, or that rings a bell, or sounds good to me, you'd probably be comfortable with a little more distance. But you don't need a huge amount, but a little more. Whereas kinesthetics, who are very deliberate, they really do require some considerable space to feel comfortable. They like to be able to move their arms around without being anybody near them, and they don't move their arms around that much. They just want to be able to. It's a very different kind of thing, and I don't know what it's based on, but people who move quickly, I think, who do things quickly, I don't know that they feel as bogged down as people who do things more considerably and more slowly, and feel, I think, are more sensitive in that way, feel the energy of people more than people who are going through things real quickly. That's probably what it's all about. But it's significant, and usually that doesn't change much in your lifetime. Usually if you're a fast talker as a kid, you're probably going to be a fast talker as an adult, and you're probably going to be more visual in the way your world looks to you. So there's some things that change. Many things remain consistent.
Well, I think that's a great fresh and new take, really, on what often is called antisocial, or not very social, or very gregarious and social and fun at a party, is just these three representational systems from NLP. And that, of course, came from Ericksonian hypnotherapy and psychology. It's like, looking at different personality types through different models, the way in which the Jungian model had 4, and that developed into 4x4, 16, and the Myers-Briggs, and the Enneagram has 9. And so we're here talking about 3, visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, 3 ways of relating to other people, and 3 types of comfort zones, which then again vary depending on the situation. I think this is all real fascinating. Hopefully, you'll take the opportunity. We're going to do an audio journey now. Stay with us, but I mean later in the week, and next week, and the week after that, to look at your comfort zones, to watch their ebb and flow in your life, and to be conscious of what can I do. This is you. What can you do to help other people feel comfortable and safe in their world? Consider what a wonderful gift that is, to help someone feel safe, to help them develop their comfort zone. All right? Just take a breath and get comfortable as you fill your lungs. And as you peak, hold for just a moment before slowly exhaling. You'll find your own rhythm, but slow it way down. And take 2 or 3 nice, slow, deep breaths in this way. As you sit back and close your eyes, and with each breath that you exhale, you feel safer and more relaxed.
So now you're taking yourself into your comfort zone, because everyone's comfortable here, in this quiet place inside your mind that's free of any fear. This is the safest place there could possibly be, and your mind is totally and completely free of any fear. None of that here, none of that near. So with every breath that you release, you feel a sense of inner peace. You feel safe, and it feels well known, this place inside called your comfort zone.
Imagine you're in a beautiful, peaceful place. Maybe outdoors, in a garden, a paradise, a wilderness, maybe at home in your favorite easy chair. And become aware of where in your body you determine the feeling of safety and comfort. Where is it you go to feel comfortable? You may already be there, but many people live in their heads. You may wish, if that's the case, to actually move your awareness. If you think this is pretending, or using the imagination, or just being creative, fine, whatever. Move your awareness down into your body as you feel safe and relaxed, letting go of even more muscular tension. As you find the place where you feel most comfortable.
And when you find that place inside, that feels most comfortable for you, put all of your attention on that very place. And here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to imagine that the place inside grows. It sort of moves larger. It sort of just flows into greater spaces, bigger places there inside, until finally it's much larger, this place where this comfort zone does reside. And it feels safer now to venture out, to touch those things that bring some doubt, to move into those things that you wouldn't before. Now you feel like your comfort zone is more able to absorb whatever you need. And you find that you somehow feel like you need to move into new places that you've never been. And with your comfort zone larger, now you can begin. And remember, too, that there's a power in you to increase comfort zones in your friends. And I think you'll find that the positive means will create very positive ends. By helping people feel more safe and free, help them be all they can be, what you'll create, you'll see, for you is a better reality. So increase your own comfort zone and, too, help other people. They can do it, too. You can help them make it through the things that are uncomfortable and that they fear. By being on their team, by being on their side, by making it appear that you're together, you're not fighting, that you're not arguing or disagreeing, that you're finding a way of just co-being, you'll make them feel safe, and their comfort zone will grow to include you. And when that happens, there's something wonderful that will occur. Something beautiful, something very pure. When two comfort zones align, it's like two minds can find the joy that they're seeking in sharing and in speaking. So expand your comfort zone to include your friends. Positive application will create great positive ends. And what you'll find when you do is your friends may turn around and do it too. Feel comfortable, first inside, and then let it grow so it can reside in others too. And what you'll find, by sharing comfort, you'll open each other's mind.
And continue to imagine that comfort zone expanding to embrace the entire world. Imagine traveling to various spots in the globe, and wherever you go, you feel comfortable and safe, as if you're home, a place you've never been, maybe some remote area of a foreign continent, maybe an international city far, far from anything you've ever seen before, and yet you feel comfortable, as if the whole planet is your home. And now you can easily imagine that comfort radiating out through the solar system and the galaxy to the edges of the universe. And even if there are multiple universes, the word universe means one, and that's your home, however big it turns out to be. That's your home. Be safe. It's up to you. And bring this awareness with you as you inhale slowly. Another one of those big, full breaths. Hold for a moment as you peak. And now, as you exhale, open your eyes wide awake back in the room, feeling real comfortable and safe, but at the same time energized and alert, better than before.
Yeah, better than before. That means that you've grown some, that your comfort zone has expanded out a tad. And, it doesn't have to be a huge amount at once. It could be small incremental growths. But unless we try new things, unless we meet new people, unless we read new books and experience new experiences, we're not really going to grow our comfort zone. And the benefits of growing your comfort zone are huge. I mean, not only do you get to be better and faster and smarter and happier and all those things, but you get to be able to help other people expand theirs. And we've talked about it a lot. The two most wonderful feelings in the world, I think, are being in love. And that means that you and another person are in the same comfort zone in a way, and then helping other people, which expands your comfort zone to include them. Michael said it so clearly, the idea of, instead of being adversaries, create an alliance, like be on their team, be on their side, and that creates a larger comfort zone. Wouldn't it be nice if the comfort zone could expand so large that it encompassed the whole world, and also so safe that you're safe inside the most crowded subway or the biggest crowd, or people could be right next to you and you still feel safe because there's only one of us here, because it's all us. And I'm not saying that we don't need to make distinctions. I talked about that earlier. There are evil behaving people, and I don't want them in my comfort zone. But all kind and gentle and loving people, and that's the vast, vast majority of us. I'd love to feel like we all share one comfort zone.
Well, the thing is, if you have an evil or a dysfunctional, bad, smelly, nasty person in your family, you are more tolerant than if they're somebody who looks different or speaks a different language. And again, like the comfort zone, it's variable, and it doesn't need to be. It's in our interest to learn to feel safe and say, yeah, that's just like my old cousin Joe, and Yeah, we keep an eye on him, but we tolerate him. He's really a pretty good guy.
There probably once was a time when, like thousands of years ago in the tribe, it was like that. We didn't have a name for it. That was just Fred. Fred did weird things because that's Fred, and Fred behaves Fred-like. Well, now of course people have all these judgments and all these issues of control, and people get embarrassed, and the comfort zones have shrunk in some ways. I think a whole lot. Well, we're talking about turning it around and expanding it, and a whole lot less them and a whole lot more us, and that makes the huge comfort zone possible.
Thanks so much for being with us for this program on comfort zones, part of our personal empowerment premium audio series here at focusedpassion.com. Remember to go back and log in every once in a while and share your favorite programs with the people you know who would most appreciate and value and benefit from these programs. Doesn't cost you a nickel to share these programs when you use our device, tool, gadget, whatever you want to call it. Right under the built-in player on your account page, just log in to focusedpassion.com. Forward the newsletter, too. There's a handy link at the bottom of each one. And we'll talk to you next week. As always, be gentle, love life, and take care of each other. For Steve Snyder, this is Michael Benner. Aloha from Maui.